There we go. Here we go. Maybe not on Twitch yet. Oh yeah, it's been going for 24 seconds. Okay. Okay. Well, we can use my magic powers. I'm just gonna make sure that I don't have stuff. Nothing hanging out. No pants down. I am wearing pants. Okay. So, you got a light on now? You do. And let's go to U2SO. Of course, I'm delayed, so I can't. Here we go. So I'm just gonna give myself a little corner, so I can't see it. Actually, I can go to the actual screen. Yeah, here we go. I'll just see, so I don't draw into this part where I'm covering it up. So let me see. Let's just start by writing it down. So I had this idea way back circa 2006 to decouple a lot of the sort of sundry operations of when you're making web stuff, you'll notice that you do a lot of the same stuff over and over again. So there's template processing, and there's login screens, and there's all that stuff. But then there's even more stuff like resizing images and adding metadata and that kind of stuff. And that what's interesting about that is that it's not sensitive in any way to the content. Doesn't matter what the content is. I mean, it matters-ish what the content is in the case of the metadata, but for the most part, you could just ignore it. And so I had this idea back in 2006 to make a substrate. And where I got the idea for that was going back all the way to 99, 2000, I was really getting into Mod Perl. And so Mod Perl, let me just put that down. Mod Perl was an Apache module, and what it did was it exposed the Apache API to Perl, and what that enabled you to do was write. You could write server modules without having to write them in C and compile them and take freaking eons to do. And so I developed a lot of technique in that time for like like what you would do, like whereas like when you would write a regular web app, you have like the request. There's a sort of a loop, right? Like a oh, it's out of lead. Come in. Come on, buddy. You can do it. There we are. So there's sort of a loop. Oh no, that one's busted too. Oh, did this happen when it fell off the damn table? There we go. Okay. So there's a loop. You got the user, whatever. They might not actually be the user. They could be a robot. You know, so like maybe they have like a thing on their head or something. And they would make a request, and the request would come around, and then it would come back to them, right? And so when you make a web app, you put it here, and so whatever the user's doing, the request comes in, your app does something, and it sends out the response. But when you're doing stuff in Mod Perl, you can put stuff here and here and here and here and here and here, etc. So you can put all this stuff all places where, like, other than the app. And I mean, you can do that in like writing C modules in Apache. You can do that in Nginx. Like you know, you can do it in Varnish. So this is not like a new thing. But like if you're writing like a Ruby on Rails app or a Django app or a freaking, God forbid, PHP or whatever, it lives. It's all you can do is right here. And so what ends up happening is that you end up like recapitulating like this functionality, but you're doing it in this part. You're doing it in the app. And so like things like access control, URL rewriting, any sort of filtering, you know, like compression, content negotiation, any of that shit, you're like redoing it in this part. And so most people, their experience doing web development, it's just this part in here, right? Like it's just, when you're doing web dev, like all you do is stuff in here. And so way back in 99, 2000, I was messing around, mainly stuff in here because Apache 1 didn't have the filters, which is a whole thing. So anyway, I had this idea in, say, like 2006, to make a substrate. And the idea is that the substrate would, it would handle, like, sort of go in between and being more, like, it would handle, like, a lot of the mundane stuff that doesn't matter to, like, when you're making a web app, like, a lot of the mundane stuff that just doesn't, like it just doesn't matter. Like a lot of the mundane stuff, like, just metadata and changing, twiddling, encodings, and like the stuff that can all be sort of like modeled as a transformation function. Now, I don't think I had that idea as far back as 2006, but that wasn't too long. And then, you know, say like 2008 was when I finally put so I had like a website probably from like 98 to, I'm going to say like 03, 04 or something like that, 03, 04. I had a website, and I didn't have one from like 2004, and then I put one up in like mid 2008 for the first time in a while. I think I had like a Blogspot blog in 2005 because I had to have one for work. But in 2008, I wanted to make a website, so I made a website. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to really make it webby. I made this thing called the Resource Handling and Representation Policy. Where is it still up? I mean, of course it's still up because this is about to be the other point. Yeah, so when I first made like a website again for the first time in years in 2008, it was June 13, 2008. So that's when I started putting stuff up. I was like, I want to have these little pages, and I want to have links, like a serious amount of links. And I want it to make sure that it like doesn't scroll. So like none of these things scroll. And so I kept like banging these off, and I found like all of this sort of trouble, with, as you do, like first of all, I made myself a little rule. I said, I can't put anything up with 404s, so I can't put anything up that hasn't had a link to it yet. And the other one was so like basically what it meant was I couldn't publish anything until like the full sort of closed subgraph was complete. And the other thing was any kind of digression, any kind of like any kind of parenthesis, any kind of sidetrack would have to go on its own page. There was no, like, it was like, I'm only going to talk about this, and then any side remarks. And what ended up happening is I got about 40 pages into this, and I gave up. It was too much effort. And part of the problem with that had to do with like, you need to name the thing before you can save it. You know, you got to call the file something before you can save it. And in the case of URLs, I was sort of thinking, and this is the sort of thing that kicked it off. So in 2008 was when I started thinking about the sort of general problem of persistent addressing. And yeah, this is still up. So what I ended up doing, actually this is a URI naming conundrum. Here it is. This is all stuff so this is all September 1st, 2008. It's interesting to look at this now. No student seeing for unpublished work. Yeah, okay. I guess I never finished it. This is the other thing, is like I kind of trail off mid-sentence in a bunch of these places because I had like no way to manage it. Like what ended up happening is I would write, and then I would, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to make this remark. So I'd bust out a new page, and I'd sit there, think about like, what am I going to call this thing? And so on and so forth. And so it took, let's say like another year, 2009. Of course, this is like peak recession. I don't have anything better to do. I want to say 2009 is when I sort of figured it out. Because, actually, or did I not? Oh my god, I didn't turn the friggin' screen. SO. Yeah, already on that. SO. U1. Oops. U1 SO. That's weird. U4 SO. U1 SO. USO screen only. U3 SO. No. U1 SO. MX. Yes, start stream. No, that's not what I wanted. Why does it not work? So. It doesn't work when it's on X11 Windows. But it works when you prefix the command, but it doesn't work if you prefix it with a 1. Whatever, dude. Anyway, let's go back to this for a second here. So, where was I? 2008, June 13, resource handling and representation policy. This is the first thing that I did when I put my site online. What I was trying to do with it was I was trying to get, stuff that was not scrolling, so like short documents that didn't scroll, and I was trying to put one topic per page. Any kind of parenthesis, any kind of digression, anything gets its own page. And it took forever to do this because what would happen would be I would split off I would go write and I would write and I'd be like, oh, this is a parenthetical remark, but I want to save it, so I'm going to put it over here. And this, of course, there's no PKM in 2008. I mean, there's kind of org mode and that's about it. But so, any kind of parenthesis, any kind of sidebar. So that was constraint number 1, is everything had to get its own page. Everything that was remotely digressive. And the other one was no 404s. So the completed graph had to be a subgraph component had to be complete, and there can't be anything pointing to anything that doesn't exist. And then third is that I was very cognizant of the URLs being durable, because 404s suck. And to date, every single URL I have ever exposed on this website in 15 years, still up. So that's more than you can say for most. So it was 2009 that so here it is, distinguishing persistence. I didn't even finish this. Distinguishing persistence from publication. But, you can see that I've been thinking about this stuff for 15 freaking years. So 2008 is sort of when I came up with the URI stuff. And then, no, I do not run my website on, I run it on a VPS, which is, moves around because but I don't run it on like a Lambda or anything like that because I don't need to. So, yeah, it cost me like $8 a month or something like that, if that. I use a VPS for a bunch of stuff. It's like $6 a month plus $2 for backups or something like that. I can't remember. But I use it for like VPN, and I use it for general shelling around and crap. So I think there's an email server on there as well. So 2009 is when RDFA is invented. That was important because prior to that, like I didn't have like a real understanding of like back in like 2006, I was doing experiments with like because the idea behind the sort of the substrate was like it was going to be like pure content, pure data, everything, and then like it would be transformed. So the idea was is you have your data source that does whatever substantive thing, and then downstream you oh wait, I did this again. Did it do it now? Yeah, there we go. So yeah, the idea was like downstream. Now the problem with like RDF XML, which was what was back in the day, was because like Turtle hadn't really been figured out yet. I mean, there was like N3 and Turtle and N triples, like they weren't tightened up in this in 2006. But the idea was, I think around 2009. So RDFA was a thing in 2009. Also, I came up with the UUID thing. So the UUID thing, what I mean by UUID thing, was basically you name a file, whatever UUID dot extension, and you don't care about what it is. In the case of URLs, it would just be this durable thing. It's just like whatever.com/some UUID, because the actual URL path, like it can be anything. And this is the thing that I learned back in 99, 2000, screwing with Mod Perl, is that you don't actually need files. You can just call it stuff. Like you can, the URLs don't have to correspond to anything. Like you can just make them up. And this is something that was not, people were not designing systems like with that in mind, 20 plus years ago. So RDFA, like what that enabled me to do was like actually connect because the problem with RDF XML and Turtle and all these other ones is like there's no way to know what the thing being talked about is. It's just a bunch of statements. And with RDFA, which is handily embedded in HTML, you can say, well, the page is the resource is the object, and handily it'll render in a browser too. And so there's this sort of clarity as to what is being talked about that didn't really exist. And for that, I mean, you just throw in a base href in the file, in the response, pointing to itself for reasons. And that was sort of also another thing around 2008. Maybe actually probably back farther, like 2006, 2007, I realized that that you can use XSLT to turn XHTML into itself, and it's like a super lazy, super lazy way to like do templates. And the other thing about it is you can't get a syntax error because it has to be syntactically correct going in, and it doesn't get unsyntactically correct coming out. And so I still use this. I figured that out 16, 17 years ago, and I still use it today. I'm just, because I'm lazy, and it works great. We're kind of at the point where, I mean, It would be nice to get a refresh on that. I really doubt that would ever happen because like standard web dev people hate XML so much, which, I mean, it's fine if you don't have to touch it directly, which I really kind of don't. But anyway, so this is sort of figuring out like how to do embedded metadata. In 2011, RDFA gets an update, but also JSON LD is invented. Now, JSON LD is unbelievably clever. It is such a clever idea it enables you to sort of transliterate the structure so that it is RDF. And I mean, RDF is not a syntax. RDF is, it's all it is the use of URLs with the subject, a predicate, and an object. That's the other thing, is you need a shit ton of URLs if you're going to use RDF. And that means a shit ton of sitting and thinking about, like, what should we call this thing? Because it's consequential, because if you don't get it right, you're going to have to rename it. If you rename it, people will link to the old thing, and then you got to redirect. And that's like a whole other thing to manage. And so I think it was 2009 when I started doing the thing with like I was definitely doing it, but I was doing it by hand. So I had it in version control, and then I would initially make the UUID file, and then I would go back and I would change it by hand. Because it wasn't until so 2015, oops, and then like today, which is going off the page. 2015 is when Brett Victor writes his ginormous climate change essay. And in it, let me see if I can get this to. Obvious. Switch scenes. Does that do it? Yes, it did it. Good. Finally did something. So I'm just gonna like make this a little bigger. Ooh, whatever. So this took this guy months to make. There's a couple of things in here. There's this tools thing where he's like talking about models and shit, and then he goes into this other one after it called Media for Understanding Situations. And I read this and I was like, dude, this has to be done. So he's got this thing, and I mean, I don't know how well you can see it. Even if you can see it in HD, you can see it. So he makes these things that are his whole shtick, his whole sort of idea behind this is that individuals, if you're arguing something, if you're arguing some policy prescription, some public policy position, and you want to say, like, we should do this thing. In this case, it was the Cash for Clunkers thing in the US, like whenever that was. Now, if there's a quantity, then what you need is, or rather, what you can do is you just plug in the number that says that argues your position. So if it's like the number is high, then it's good, and the number is low, then it's bad. You can just plug that in, and then as people are arguing in op-eds back and forth forever about stuff that doesn't like there's clearly a point at which it's good and a point at which it's bad. And so the idea was, he's like, we'll just put this in the page, and then you can just do this to it, and you can give this to the person, and and they can toggle and they can fiddle around with it, and they can tell for themselves, like, at what point is this a good idea or a bad idea. And so I've gone and I've made these kinds of things too. And he's like, also, he's got this sort of, he's got this, the calculations in here, which is cool. So, I don't know if this is, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, so, this is a lot of work, and I'm like, well, and the thing about Bret Victor too is, like, he's really good at making these very convincing demos, but it's like, this is all one-off. I mean, he's got like a kind of a library in here too, but it's like, that's not the problem. The problem is the data. The problem is, getting marshaling the data from wherever it comes from and putting it wherever it needs to go, like, is a humongous pain in the ass. And it's like, it's not a matter of engineering, it's a matter of design. Like, it's a matter of coming up with, like, deciding how to do it. For the most part, it's a matter of, like, when somebody's like, how are we going to do this? It's not like we can't do it and we need to figure out how. It's like, there are a million ways to do this and we have to just pick one. And so I got kind of excited about this. This is 2005, so, or 2015, what am I saying? When I started looking at this, and then I think it took a while. Like 2018 was when I finally started writing what I'm writing right now, and then and then 2023 was the Summer of Protocols. Actually, somebody's paying me for it now. And I did a little bit in 2020, like last year, 2022. There's also here in 2013 and 2012, there's IBIS vocab, and then IBIS tool. I think 2019 was sort of like, was when it got kind of close to viable. Yeah. So the IBIS stuff, and there's also the content inventory vocabulary too, which I started back in 2010. So, like, there's so much of this stuff is, yeah, and then I guess 2011, 2012, I was also doing other little tooly things in any way. But, like, the thing that's been missing, and I mean, I can show, this guy, if I can. Okay. So yeah, this thing is a maturation of a tool that I made like 10 10 years ago now. It's Halloween 2013. And I did this to test a protocol. So that's also... did I do it? Yes. So, RDF-KV protocol is very simple. It embeds so it embeds RDF diffs into form fields. And it is real handy for making RDF-based web apps because it enables you to like you don't need Java, like you don't need a JavaScript framework. Basically, you can have like a lot fewer moving parts. You can get up and running like very like simple instructables, and when you combine that with here's something that's running. No, it's a concept scheme. So let's move to the actual this guy. This should connect anyway. I go through this in other stuff, so I'm not going to go through this right now, but like you can see the sort of whatever.com / a UUID and the UUI, so like the UUID is the data. UUID subjects correspond to a web page. And of course, like this is like fully exportable. It's totally transparent with respect to its data. I wrote this thing to test the RDF-KV protocol because I was like, well, you know, if you had like a semantic web browser that just like did a bare bones, you know, listing of, you know, all of the, you said, okay, the subject is the thing on the page that you're looking at, and then you've got all of the links going out and all of the links coming in. And God. Anyway, so the idea behind it is like if you had that, and this is the thing is I didn't have this part yet. You could just basically make a little like a thing that just like it's like a factory for little graph database web apps. And the reason why I didn't do it is because I didn't have a reasoner. And I also wrote all this in Perl because that's what you write, you know, when you've been writing code since 1997. And so anyway, that was the, oops. There. That's the story behind that. So I guess I should talk about the structure of you know what? I'm actually kind of super got tired all of a sudden, so I think we're gonna leave that installment for now. There's also nobody watching, so sayonara.